Testing. Yeah. Can you hear me?
All right, we are back. Another episode of another show, another broadcast of Let's Look at This. And I am your humble host, Dr. K, and gracious sidekick, Minister P. Mr. P, how are you this evening?
Listen, a great shout out to all my brothers and sisters, friends and supporters. Listen, everything is good in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. We're gonna get this thing rolling tonight. You know, see, I'm doing different things. Trying to rush to the mic. So, but I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm warmed up. I'm stretched
Things
out.
happen. Things happen. That's
Oh
life.
yeah. Today's show is brought to you by WKTSE Radio. Promoting ourselves, advertising ourselves to bring some live educational fun, as I call it. Because at this time, we don't have time for waste time on talking about privileged street mess, little street lingo. We can do that on our. We get enough time to do that, the party and the we in the midst of the education process, and I believe that's important. And it's sad that some of our people don't really take heed to that real base of education. Because education, let's be clear, ladies and gentlemen, it's just not myself the degree in education that we still not going of Minister P going to get a pastoral degree and becoming a doctor in reference to that. So education is cross life. Education is meaning behind what you're doing every day, getting the knowledge of self. That is the true process of education. So we have to be very clear on how we maneuver. And as I'll state it again, Minister, as I said before, talking about numbers and popularity. You hear the sound of my voice, whether it be right now live or after the fact, for you to into our station and be able to receive something that can help you in life. That's where we're at in this process. Not about. I mean, of course, Minister B, you as well. If I know, it'd be nice to see 20,000, across the screen where we're educating each other. I've always been in that process of being able to receive education, and
Well, that's coming.
oh yeah, I believe it. I believe it. I believe it. As we sit on this platform and try to present well, it's nice to do all the pretty intro and all the nice intro, but some people are all about trying to get numbers and how they look on the screen, which sometimes doesn't. I mean, yeah, you want to make your appearance be known because people are watching, and I get it, but at the same time, education is first. Education process is first. So how we can get to that point to where this can continue, and then we can, we get loose and lax on the show and talk about sports, and we may go into some details of a little sidebar relationship, but we're in a crunch time. This is crunch time. We're in the fourth quarter, ladies and gentlemen, and then we got 5 minutes left.
Come on. and the ball's in our hands. Let's look at that.
Right. The ball is right in our hands, Mississippi, and is what we're gonna do with that ball. That's the thing. We don't have time for turnovers. This is not a turnover time.
Well, Dr.
You
K, I'm going to reframe what you just said because that's so important. Listen, education brings knowledge.
Mhm.
Knowledge brings power. Power brings opportunity, and
Oh yeah.
opportunity brings limitless exposure to the table of the good stuff.
Oh yeah. So when you get that rolling, and you got the good stuff rolling, it's a process of where you're learning and you're able to regurgitate that to someone else. You know, so we get stuck in that mentality, Minister P, about well, I already heard that, or well, somebody else didn't hear it. Somebody else didn't hear it. And so you have to be in that mindset where if I heard it, then I need to pass this information along. And that's no different than, hey, it's a bad situation up there. You may want to not go up there. Well, somebody told me that already. No, pass it along
To someone else. Yeah.
to someone else so they'll know, hey, I need to detour to another path. I need to go another way. Or hey, what's a good way to go? This information, important information that needs to be passed down. And that's what this platform is about. It's not about copycatting. And again, the copycat is the important information that is a need to know, a need to know. Being able to be in a position to where you're able to give that information to where we can find out who we are. So our show, as you can see the title today, is Faith in the Straw Man. The question is, who is the straw man? Who is that straw man? And when we deal with that straw man talk goes down and so many, it's a lingo because somebody say, hey, that's a straw man situation. That's straw man talk. And so most people say that, but not knowing and understanding what that straw man entails, what it means, and what it involves in reference to how it's broken down to understand. Most people overstand that process. So, because if you're under it, then you won't know. But if you're over it, you'll be able to see and gather all the information. So, overstanding the process is definitely a need to know. So, we're gonna
So,
go
Dr.
into
K,
detail.
would you break that?
Mhm.
Yeah, would you break that definition down for our listeners?
So, ladies and gentlemen, the straw man would be, and we of course we always want to go into what's in the land. If anybody, is reference to detail, we can't see that writing, as I've referred to in this book all the time, the Law Dictionary. The Law Dictionary, which is up to date as it's going to be. This is a version from 2016. And of course, they always continue to write law, but this is about as new as it is right now. I've even checked, and I will check again for a later edition because we are further into the year, so of years from 2016. So, but this book is very relevant. So, straw man person, a colloquial expression designating those arguments in briefs or opinions created solely for the purpose of debunking or discovering them. Arguments so created are like straw man because they are by nature insubstantially. So insubstantially would states to be that it's that term insubstantial is weak. Weak now. So if you look up the definition for insubstantial, and if you can pull that up real quick, the definition, and I'll put it across the screen if you can read it out to everyone. Insubstantial, what that means, so you can get a better understanding what the straw man is really in detail of what is breaking down the term of what the straw man really is talking about, or what is the straw man. Most people don't understand. Most people gather that information, but this is playing a hand in everyday process, and what we're dealing with now is we're seeing so much still happening in society. You need to spell them, Mr. P, or you want me to? I'm a matter of fact. Do you want
you
better,
was gonna
Mr.
pull it
P?
up? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pull it up then. That way you can, and I'll let you go ahead and briefly. Give me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen, pull this up so we get a better understanding of what we're dealing with. That way we can go into detail with reference to how we should be looking at things and not go along with what is played, in front of us. Now, of course, we're going to go just strictly right into detail of what Google is giving us. But I mean, for all sense purpose of time, we'll just go with that information. Give me 1 second.
And then I have another definition of straw man and an example, so we can understand an example of what it is that straw man encompasses. So the term insubstantial, it actually means lacking strength, lacking solidity, is not solid, is not solid or real, it's imaginary. Um, the definition that I have for that, Dr. K, is a straw man is a form of an argument, an informed fallacy of having the impression of refuting an argument, whereas the subject of the argument was not even addressed or refuted, but instead replaced with a false one. Oh my goodness. Listen, I'm telling you right now, so many of us have already succumbed to this. We have been affected by this and didn't even know it. This is one of those psychological ploys that somebody who's well endowed psychologically will put on you, and you won't even know it. Next thing you know, what you were saying doesn't even matter because they canceled it out because they came up with a false argument to cancel yours out, and you didn't even realize it. This is why this is a great subject that you brought up, because we need to be informed. We're not going to be hoodwinked by somebody throwing a straw man on us. We're too smart for that.
And that goes right into our straw man issue, what everybody's been talking about, the elephant that nobody wants to pay attention to, the Roe versus Wade situation, which has embarked on us as a society. When you look at Black society, and I'm gonna say that again, when you look at Black society, this we're always the ones to be pushing the wagon. Seems like this to be. We always got to be the ones to be the. If I had a better illustration of that, would be we're the ones, we're the feet of the Flintstones. That's us, and somebody else doing the driving. So we're the feet, somebody else doing. So imagine yourself doing the pedaling to push a heavy load, and then somebody else is driving and steering, and you can't see where you're going. This Roe versus Wade situation it was mainly, I mean, and if we read it, this is a landmark decision of the Supreme Court in which the court ruled that the Constitution of the United States generally protects a pregnant woman's liberties to choose to have an abortion. All right. So, yeah, we don't infringe on anyone for whether to whether they want to make a decision on if they want to have or not have a child. That's clear there, at least me. If you make that decision, that's mainly your decision to make. And no entity, whether it be man or woman, should be able to tell you that you need to relinquish that child from your body in such a way. So, in stating that, We go into the detail of the woman who actually spearheaded this. Her name is, they call her Jane Roe for the most part, but her name is Nancy uh, McCullen, or McLaren, McCulley. So she stated, and to go into detail, she had stated that she wanted to have an abortion because she was gang raped by 8 Black males. That was her statement that she made to bring forth this decision made back in the 70s. And if most people that was looking around during that time, if you really study and step back as what was happening coming about in the 60s into the 70s, of course, since 69, and it's be 68, 69, of course, Vietnam situation is happening all through mid 60s, right? Going into the late 70s, Dr. King, Malcolm X, so many people were being assassinated, right? During that time. And of course, the last of that being Dr. King being assassinated during that time. And then Blacks in this country reacting to what had happened. So the reactionary process was, okay, Blacks reacted in the 60s, late 60s, going into the 70s. You got the Vietnam War, people reacted to that. So it was a lot of tension in this country at that point in time. And when you think of this Roe versus Wade decision and how it comes out during in 1973, you got to look at, okay, what was happening. You started to have the congregation of people, our people being in the mindset of a straw. We've been getting the straw man speech and the straw man situation being dumped on us to say, well, hey, that's there, but it's not there, right? We're looking for freedom. We're looking for justice. We're looking for a place to be accepted, more or less. So that straw man situation comes into play with this case of this woman making this statement based on that she was attacked by 8 Black males. And then she wanted to have an abortion because she was impregnated per se. Now, this was just her statement. So in saying that, you had, and to go into depth, like we walking through this slope to just give people a visionary process. Now here you got 8 men, 8 Black men. And so what was happening that the reason why this case became a big thing because a woman's movement had popped up out of this movement. The woman's movement was already happening. I'll say a white woman's movement was happening out of this. And so they chose to say, well, hey, so since everything is Jim Crow, segregation, all that is kind of ending to some degree, they're going to be moving into our neighborhoods now. So in 73, this woman chose to embark on something that now here what we're faced with, everybody's paying attention to this because we're talking about it, right, Minister? Everybody's paying attention to this case and has, to me, have lost sight of what is at the real thing that is that is at hand. We've been talking about reparations, right? We've been geared on the maldistributor of wealth. That's where we're sitting at, and so this case is on the table now. And to me, as well as I know, Minister, they'll be talking about this for probably the entire summer. This will be a discussion for the entire summer. Why the woman should be able to do what she wants with her body, the woman, and that's what we get straw man handed to us because initially this whole case in itself was more or less created. If you walk through history through this, if you look at the case in itself, it was really created to some degree, to protect the Black woman. Why? Because during the slavery time, and I'm gonna just go into the small detail of that, the Black woman was being raped anyway, right? Now we go on a plantation. Now, when we do the research, reading states, and I'm not gonna name them all, but I will name a few. We had Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, And I believe, I want to say Louisiana, for the most part, were breeding states for slaves, black females. Now, when you go back in time, 1808, in 1808, they stopped bringing, because we went over that Mississippi. There was a number of us, as far as blacks, already in the country before immigrants started to. So the other immigrant that was black, that was being brought to these different parts, being black males, they were being used as breeding ground. They would be taking this. It was a movie. It's a movie called. uh, can't get the name. It'll come to me. Throughout the show, it'll come to me. But this movie entails. They said it gets as close as you can to how slavery is happening in the United States, and they've showed a lot of things. They even show bits and pieces in it, but you got to really watch to catch it. So they showed one plantation to where they were actually breeding. So they took a black male who may have been out of mind or just born with some ailment because of incest breeding. So he may have been,
Right.
What they use the term, he may have had a disability, but all he knew to do was have sex, right? So what they did was they had a test. They did testing way before that brown paper bag thing goes a long ways. Or what the paper bag, it was a brown bag. They put it over the slave head, black slave male head, send him into a room and say, hey, well, we need you. There's some good stuff in there. Some ladies in there. Now he's already been forced to do this deed, sexual deed. So now he was forced into a room to go ahead. And he didn't know who was in the room because he had this bag over his head. Now when they brought him into the light, you know who was in the room? So they
No, I
tried to
don't.
get as closely. They tried to get as close as they could to the DNA of that male because they said, well, he's a breeding horse, so we need to have a child, whether it be male or female, to have that same mentality. Because they didn't have a proper science research as far as what the DNA and what the mindset and how stuff would be handed down. So they would take this male, put a bag over his head, send him into a room. So he either had intercourse with his sister or his mother, and hence the term what we call in the black community MF. That's how that term comes about, Minister P.
Okay, so
That time.
how's that relating though to abortion and Roe versus
So
Wade?
the abortion
Bring us
meaning
up to date.
that comes up in today. Of course, they give it the name, but it relates to is reference to a protection becoming to the black woman. Black woman should have more or less been protected, but they didn't protect her because she was used for breeding purposes. Now they didn't in slavery in 1808 when the immigration process stopped and said, well, you can't bring any more black male slaves over here. They said, well, how are we gonna do this? So they start having breeding farms. So they start to have black females. The females that they had, they sent them to breeding farms. So the black males, the ones they chose would go out and breed, and even more. The protection right comes, of course, that protection comes as we talked about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, but it's solely now here. Those three amendments are solely only for native black. We're gonna say native black American. I'm not gonna use that loose term African because I don't know who that is. A native black American. That those three amendments were only for blacks only in this country. That was the purpose of them. So the connection to this Roe versus Wade, the white male having intercourse with the so this is, and I've heard this many occasions in my lifetime. The white male doesn't become of a man until he has sex at the age of 14. So he would send him in there, oh, go become a man. And he would have sex with a with a black woman, possibly impregnating her with a child. And they never gave that child, and that may have been point of rape. Hold her down, hold that black woman down, hold her down, whatever name they was using at that time. And the child, 14-year-old white male, goes in there and have intercourse with her, impregnates her. They wasn't giving her abortions. So that's where the straw man issue comes in. We're jumping on this bandwagon for a woman who even lied now. That's where we get into that. This woman that stated that she was gang raped, she later ended up lying, and we'll get into that later. But getting back on track with how does this all connect with these amendments that they wrote for blacks only? This was really not even a protection process for the white woman. She just made it a straw man issue, saying, hey, look, I got gang raped by these 8. So I need this protection because these 8 black men raped me. And the black woman, she just more or less jumped on the bandwagon because saying, well, hey, I'm a woman too. And all in all, it was a straw man issue. Because they was like, hey, see, black woman, I'm getting raped. Didn't you get raped too? And the black woman said, yeah, I did. But not knowing her history, she didn't understand that her ancestors had been already getting raped prior to. And this particular amendment law that they had in place, the Roe versus Wade, was actually for, would be really considered for a black woman. Because she was getting raped, but wasn't given the opportunity to have an abortion. Even though we get in society today, we have all type of ailments and things that happen in society. You know, women get attacked, different things of that nature because of the society we live in. Certain neighborhoods we may live in, things of that nature. But at the same time, black woman gets raped, nobody can run to her rescue at all.
Dr. K, let me say this: those are the atrocities of slavery, and that happened back then. And we're Roe versus Wade is an altogether different thing in this aspect. It was given to protect women that wanted to have the right to abort a child or keep a child. There's cases of incest, there's cases of rape, where an abortion would be a needed thing for women. There's cases where a mother can't afford that child, can't keep that child, and as in their minds, as far as being a burden on society, a burden on the state, then they would abort it. So these are the cases and the issues why nowadays in modern time, women are choosing or have chosen for the last 50 years to have the right to an abortion, where now the Supreme Court has come in and said, we take away your rights as women. We take those rights away and we dictate to you what you're going to do with your body. And so that is what the uproar is now that's dividing the country.
Well, you know what the true uproar is about that, really? See, that here again, that straw man issue, Minister B. If you look at numbers by race, right? Because I didn't create it. So that's why we're talking about it. They chose to do that because white women are not having babies at the rate that they want them to. That's the real purpose. But they're not telling you and I that. This is something you got to go and research and look and say, okay, what are the numbers? Because if you look at our numbers as reference to how we were having babies, blacks were having, I mean, just to be clear, we got some of our relatives go back, they was having 15, 16, 17, 18 children, right? And we got some relatives that got tons of brothers and sisters. So our rates wasn't more or less low, but their rates is more or less low. And that's why they chose to say, well, white women need to start having babies more. That's the whole purpose of it.
And so they gave them the right to abortion? Because that's what Roe versus Wade is about.
Well, they gave them the right to abortion at first, as based on what this woman who came forth and said she was gang raped. The whole purpose of that came about in 1970, right? So you follow me? They were in fear of blacks because of the uproar that was happening around the country with the assassination and all this stuff. So they, hey, people going crazy. These blacks are going crazy. I'm in fear for my, and then here she comes with this women's movement. We need something to take the eye off the prize of what Black folks really need. You know, that talk that goes, that sees about connecting the dots. So that ties into that benign neglect situation, right? So it's like, hey, well, Blacks need this. Like so right, reparations is what the last couple of years, what everybody, hey, we need reparations, we need reparations. All of a sudden, name me who's talking about reparations now.
Right. But look, abortion takes away, right? That's what,
Mhm.
let's look at it like
Okay.
abortion takes away. So if they want them to increase their fertility, and
Mhm.
let's go with that theory. If they want them to increase their fertility and have more babies, why would they give them the right to abort? And women and white women are aborting.
Because of that situation that happened in the 70s, because blacks started to try to move into other communities. And so this white women's movement came along and said, well, hey, oh, we don't want blacks living next door to us. That was what that was really all about. Or if you go back even further in history, here comes the white woman saying, well, hey, why would you put the black man over me? But then when we go into the Constitution, the 19th Amendment, that amendment is written for white women. If you really read that amendment, it's written for white women fully. So they've had the right to vote. Now, the only way a white woman could vote during the slavery times was what? One, she is married to, and she really didn't have to vote this white male. So she inherited everything. If he died, she inherited everything that he had. Then more or less, if she owned her own property, she was able to vote. She was able to vote. So we're gonna come back to that point, Ms. P. We got about on video here. We're gonna come back in. We're gonna take a quick little brief close in the session and then come back in, Ms. P. I'm gonna
Come right back
get you
into
back
this.
in. Yes, yes.